I'm Alicia.
And I'm Maddie.
And welcome to the Fangirl Diaries, a podcast where we talk about our obsessions,
Reminisce about our teen icons,
and explore the books, movies, and shows that made us the incredibly nerdy 30-somethings that we now are.
This is an exciting episode today. Hey, Alicia, why is it particularly exciting?
Well, the content is extremely exciting to me, but it is also my birthday.
Yay!
So I feel like you've indulged me by scheduling my favourite film for my birthday podcast.
Of all time.
Of all time. Like, with no question. I was watching it again yesterday, and I just thought, this is my favourite film in the world. In the whole world.
See, I think, so this is obviously part 2 of our Lord of the Rings extravaganza series that we're coming back to. And I actually think Return of the King is my favourite, but we can come to that in part 3.
That's good, because that's next. But does that mean neither of us have Fellowship as our...
I know. No. I love Fellowship, of course.
Yeah, me too. But this is now, we're taking things up a notch. And I was re-listening to I was thinking about our Fellowship episode. And a lot of that time we were saying, we'll come to that in 2 Towers. Or we'll keep our powder dry for that in 2 Towers. And now we're at 2 Towers.
It's time.
It's time. I cannot wait. So... we talked a lot in the Fellowship of the Ring episode about our initial introduction to Lord of the Rings. If anybody wants to hear that, please pop back to that episode first. We now arrive at the time where it's the year 2002. December is approaching.
We already know we love the first one and that we love the world and the concepts. And we're exceptionally excited for this movie.
I think this had then overtaken... the Harry Potter films to be my most anticipated film, to date at that point. We spoke in the Fellowship episode about when Fellowship was coming up in 2001. It had a kind of parallel release date with Philosopher's Stone, with Harry Potter. And I had spent, most of my childhood waiting for those books to be adapted to screen. But... once Fellowship had happened and you and I and our whole friendship group had dived headfirst into a Lord of the Rings obsession, I could not be more excited for 2 Towers.
Yeah.
I remember the trailer. Did we go together to see it? I'm not sure that we
I don't
did.
know. I know I saw it multiple times in the cinema. My strongest memory is, I think I mentioned last time that my dad was a massive Tolkien fan and, was the one that kind of brought me to Fellowship of the Ring. And he loved the first film and was also very excited for the second film. So I remember what we did was... we took it very seriously where we were going to go. We booked ahead to find a cinema. We were not going to go to a View or an Odeon where there would be
weren't going to go to the regular cinema.
Lots of loud people who might talk over it and not take it seriously enough. No. Our family, we went to, I don't know, it was somewhere like the Barbican or somewhere where you were like, we're going to get peace and quiet. It's got to be a big screen, but it's got to be like a kind of upper establishment type of place. We brought picnic sandwiches in soft lid Tupperware boxes that we knew were not going to make any noise because we didn't want to bring any food that could disturb the atmosphere. So we were trying to think, what's the quietest food we can bring because we know it's going to be hours long. It was a massive deal in our household.
I can see that with your dad's reverence of film anyway.
Yes.
But then apply that to Lord of the Rings. I love that he had you all traipsing off to a kind of art house version of going to see this.
Yes.
We did the complete opposite. We did go to View Cinemas Croydon.
Yeah.
And I think your dad had the right idea because it was an absolute hellscape in that. And I don't think we had booked ahead. I can't for the life of me think why. Maybe this is because it was still relatively pre-internet kind of stage.
Yeah, you probably didn't need to as much back then. Yeah.
Except that you did. So we showed up and I remember it being incredibly tense because it was packed. The whole thing was packed. And this was back in the day where you would show up, hope that you'd left enough time before the movie, and then you divide it into 5 very aggressive queue systems. And I went with my friend Lauren and my family, and when we got there, I was struck by enormous panic that we weren't going to get into the film.
Oh my goodness.
And I thought, I can't bear it. I'm going to have to elbow people out of the way. I've waited too long to see this film. And I was arriving, thanks to all of you at school, like absolutely equipped and ready to see this movie.
Yeah.
I remember trying to explain to my mum in the queue. My friend Lauren was like, was down with what was going on. Like, she knew, she was ready. She knows everybody's names. It was all fine. But I was doing this like crash course for mum in the queue about the concept of the Nazgul and like what had happened at the end of Fellowship. And
with like Gandalf and everything.
I was like, Mum, Gandalf's gone.
Yeah.
He's fallen down the mines, etc. My poor mum. And then the viewing experience was one that would have absolutely curled your dad's like toenails, because it really was a popcorn nacho movie. But I remember loving it for that. I had those terrible, like the cheap melted cheese nachos. And I just spent the next 3 hours shoveling nachos into my mouth, but watching what I thought was the greatest blockbuster experience.
I mean, that is
of all time.
That is the cinema experience, isn't it? It's being with other people and experiencing the movie together.
And I remember people in Two Towers, like clapping at particular moments. There was a lot of like whooping, there was gasping, it really felt, and at the end people stood and clapped in View Cinemas Croydon. I don't think I'd ever seen this ever. It was completely wild. And then I think I went again the next day.
Yeah, I'm sure I saw it many, many times in the cinema before it closed release.
Do you think it is the best one? If you had to pick one to like, if you now rented out a cinema, which I don't know how, we'd have to like win the lottery or something, and you got to screen one of these movies, do you think it's the best cinema experience?
Yeah, maybe. Although, yeah, I still do just love Return of the King because it makes me weep. So it's pretty hard for me to turn that down. But yes, it is. I mean, we're going to talk about it, but like the sequences and are just, very cinematic.
I think it has the best battle of the trilogy in Helm's Deep.
I agree.
But it also has the best, sequential build, because it does still start at a relatively quiet and slow pace. It opens with like Frodo and Sam lost in Eowyn Muil. They're like, scurrying about the rocks. Gimli and Legolas and Aragorn are just chasing along after Merry and Pippin. But we go from there to the largest full-scale battle of all time. Yeah. I think Return of the King really, and this is great, but we dive straight into the epic nature of it picks up from there.
Yeah, and there's multiple battles and it's,
multiple battles. Yeah, it goes on and on. Whereas Two Towers gets you, the build-up to Helm's Deep is part of the whole spectacle. And that's probably the one, if I had to rent a big screen, that I'd go with.
Nice.
But let's talk about how it differs, because as a film, now we move to a completely different structure.
Yes.
From Fellowship.
We talked a lot in the first one about how it's quite a linear story and it's following just the hobbits pretty much. And it's, following this one storyline centered around the hobbits all the way to the Fellowship. Then it follows the Fellowship as a group. It's like one thread storyline that's very contained and well thought through, but quite straightforward. Whereas here, the Fellowship is broken into its 3-ish threads, and we follow all of those stories in parallel with each other. So we're chopping and changing between them, needing to be able to follow each of them coherently. And that's a really difficult thing to pull off that is absolutely exceptionally well pulled off.
Yep. When I was rewatching Two Towers, I thought, this is the film that was potentially the most risky. If there was going to be one that falls apart and doesn't work and becomes laborious or difficult to follow, it should have, to all intents and purposes, been this one.
Yeah.
And yet it's one of the most nail-biting and the most gripping. And in complete contrast to Fellowship, because you're following that linear quest narrative in the first film, you only step to the side very occasionally. So in the first film, you only briefly break off to see Gandalf and Saruman separately in Isengard.
Yeah, that's like one of the few times that you go and see something else.
You have that isolated scene between Aragorn and Arwen on the bridge.
Yeah.
That is just kind of necessary for their plot.
And Aragorn and Boromir have their moment with the sword and stuff down in the...
In Rivendell. You're right.
Yeah, there's a few moments.
There's a few moments. Yeah. But they feel noticeable because the rest of the time you are with Frodo and therefore with the Fellowship.
Yeah.
Until it splinters at the end. But we pick up in Two Towers where that splintering has taken place.
Yeah.
Like, the minute we open with Frodo and Sam, they're isolated from the rest of the characters. Mm-hmm. So we jump into that fractured. And you would think that it doesn't work, but it does, because it manages to keep the tempo by, like at the start, it's a tempo build. So by swapping between the different storylines, you continuously are fed the engagement with these different worlds, you're introduced to new characters, and it's excitement building. But the minute we swap to the second half of the film, I think the chopping and changing between the different narrative perspectives is so brilliant for tension, because do you remember how infuriating it is when you're in the middle of the Helm's Deep sequence to cut to the Ents?
Cut away.
You cut away to like either the Ents, and it's like the Ent moot, and they're having that laborious meeting, and you think, bloody hell.
It's true. But I
get back to it.
It actually reminds me a lot of my experience reading the books, which I think I mentioned, I didn't do until after, and it may even have been after Two Towers or even Return of the King movies. I can't remember exactly when I properly read them. But, I mean, the threads of those storylines in the books are even more tedious and laborious and spread out. And yeah, I'm sorry to say it, but the Merry and Pippin and Treebeard stuff in the book, the first time I read it through, I would just try and read that chapter, and I'd just skip the whole chapter and be like, I need to jump forward to like when I get back to Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli. Like, I can't cope with it anymore. It's so slow.
Oh, I skipped that whole bit. Like, this is what I'm saying. The book of Two Towers is... It doesn't interchange, does it? It's split into the 3 separate sections.
Exactly.
So the reader is asked to read the whole Frodo and Sam piece.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, I skim-read those and then just read the Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli one.
Exactly, the exciting one.
Well, so we'd pre-agreed in advance that when we're going to deal with Two Towers, to stop us jumping around too much, we'll do a little bit of a deep dive into each of the 3 storylines first, before we zigzag across them in our categories. Which do you think? Do you have a favourite? When you watch Two Towers, do you think, oh good, we're back with this storyline?
Oh, it has to be the Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli storyline. It has
does,
to be.
Doesn't it?
Honestly, the Frodo and Sam one, actually not much happens in Two Towers with Frodo and Sam. Their story moves along quite slowly. And Merry and Pippin are great fun, but like, because, the Treebeard stuff it is good, but it does feel slightly disjointed from the rest. So yeah, it's just not as exciting as the main plot is actually... the quest to find Merry and Pippin, and they find Gandalf, and then they go to Rohan. Like, it's got the most pace and the most adventure.
If you wrote out the content exactly of what happened in each of these 3 threads, the amount of stuff in the Rohan plot is enormous in terms of new characters introduced. That's where a lot of the action pieces happen. So maybe let's deal with Frodo and Sam first and sort of get them out of the way.
And then we can move on. Yeah.
Sorry, Elijah Wood and Sean Astin.
I mean, I think pretty much Frodo and Sam, at the beginning of the movie, they started walking through all of the, like the stone...
They're in Emon Whale.
Yeah, in Emon Whale, and then pretty much by the end, they haven't got much further than that. They haven't even, they don't get to the gates until Return of the King, right? They're just kind of wandering for most of it.
They get sidetracked by, and it's the bit of the film I always forget until I rewatch it, they get sidetracked by their interaction with Faramir.
Yeah.
That I too think of it as them sort of staggering about in the rocks and the marshes for most of the film.
Yeah.
And then I forget the bit where when Frodo runs into Faramir and his men for the first time, I think, oh shit, yeah. That's right.
And that's something. Faramir's character is so different in they kind of created him into a antagonist for Frodo, and in the books he's just not. They kind of created that little storyline to add a little bit more tension into what was happening with that storyline.
Because they needed to, because otherwise we would have just had Frodo and Sam wandering about.
Yeah.
And that at the start, the Frodo and Sam narrative, it's the one that undergoes, as a film, the least change. We talked about in Fellowship that you actually get the innocence and naivety of Frodo at the start in that film. Him and Sam feel very free. Even if you look at them, they're clean, they're gleaming, their skin is healthy at the start of that film.
True.
When we open with Frodo and Sam in Two Towers, they are already exhausted.
Yes.
It opens with them having that scene where Frodo is, draining the water bottle. He's almost got nothing left. Sam chucks him a bit of lember spread and they're lost. And I think he even says that, let's face it, Mr. Frodo, we're lost. Before we get the introduction of Gollum.
Yeah.
But that is the introduction of Gollum is really what reinvigorates, I think, the Frodo and Sam narrative in Two Towers. He's the star of that. He almost eclipses them.
And I think was a star of that movie at the time.
For sure.
When he was brought in, there were obviously hints of him in the Fellowship that he was around, but wasn't visually really portrayed very much.
No.
And yeah, I think Gollum was the first of the real successful motion capture animated characters seen on screen in that way. And he was just, it was innovation to create this, they captured all the dots on his face and every
Poor Andy
movement
Serkis.
Andy Serkis has made a career now out of this kind of work that just didn't exist before the Two Towers. It was brand new technology.
Yeah. I remember thinking the character of Gollum was the one that kept me on my toes in the film the most, because they deal with his schizophrenia in such a way that, again, is innovative filmmaking. One of the best scenes in that film is the scene where the two hobbits are sleeping and Gollum talks to himself. Yeah. But they split the screen, they do the shots in such a way that you can really tell the distinction between the character of Smeagol and the character of Gollum. And it ends with Smeagol's, "Leave now and never come back."
Yeah.
And watching that for the first time, it is actually relatively hard to follow until you understand what's going on with Gollum. But it's so well shot. The filmmaking does its best to help you understand Gollum's transition, and his character is on a knife edge. You think, is he good? Is he reformed? Or do we believe Sam, who spends a lot of the film saying, "No, Mr. Frodo, he's a monster, he's a creature, he's dangerous, I don't trust him."
But what's interesting, I think, about that is that there is no real answer to whether Gollum is good or bad. He's kind of both and neither at the same time, and it never is really resolved. I think, Sam is actually kind of wrong in his prejudice against Gollum, in that his prejudice is based on he's a creature, he looks evil, he
smells bad.
Yeah, exactly. It's based on
he doesn't have good table manners.
Yeah, exactly. And Frodo is trying to see the kind of humanity in it, and is able to see because he knows the effects of the ring and feels it, and feels that he could easily become Gollum. That's why he has this empathy for Gollum. But there is no answer to the question of whether Gollum ultimately is good or evil. He's not really anything.
There is that haunting exchange between Frodo and Sam where Frodo says, I have to believe he can come back. I think Sam has asked Frodo, why do you want to help him?
Yeah.
And Frodo says, I have to believe he can come back. And you think, oh my gosh, I can see Frodo sees Gollum as a more advanced version of what he would become if he let the ring. His future, absolutely. Yeah. But the film ends on that. The film ends with a line from Gollum. He says, "Follow me." He's leading he's got the plan about Shelob in mind.
Yes.
And it would have been so easy to end that film on a kind of climactic Helm's Deep note and have that be tension-filled. But instead,
it draws us into the next movie.
It does, with the sense that the Gollum character has won out, possibly, for now, and defeated Smeagol, and is going to lead the hobbits astray. Oh, it's absolutely chilling. So are there any bits of it? It sounds like we're dumping on the Frodo-Sam storyline.
No, not at all.
But are there any bits where you think, that's cool? Like, do they get any awesome moments in this movie?
I think the stuff where they see the Oliphants and the army, and that's when they get captured by Faramir. There's this wonder of still, even though they're exhausted, even though they're lost, even though they're kind of traveling through these unknown worlds, they still have this wonder at this bigger world that they didn't know existed and they thought were just part of fairy tales from the Shire. And they're still they're still going on an adventure, even if it's kind of wearing them down.
Yeah, I love that moment too. It's a subtle one. And Frodo smiles back. I think it's Sam who says, "Look, Mr. Frodo, it's an Oliphant."
Yeah.
And Frodo does give him a real genuine, excited smile that you almost don't see again in that film.
Yeah.
At all.
I think also just the interaction between Frodo and Sam and Gollum, like the three of them, the tension that trio creates. We've just seen Frodo and Sam in the first as like inseparable, just devoted to each other, and the insertion of Gollum as like a kind of, you can just see the cracks in that relationship because of Gollum, and I think that's really, really good.
It's like a warped love triangle. You start to see Gollum insert himself between Frodo and Sam and chip away at their bond. And it's brilliantly frustrating to watch, for the viewer, because you're thinking, Sam's right, come on, Frodo. But you do get some great set pieces in that storyline. Like from a cinematic perspective, you get the dead marshes and that iconic moment where Frodo sort of face plants into the marsh. Do you remember?
Really creepy.
The eyes of the dead. It's some sort of elf or man from the battle in the past. That its eyes open. It's dead eyes,
and they start trying to pull him down to them. Yeah,
and he just completely face plants in the water. But for some reason, it's not stupid. It really, really works.
But it's Gollum that brings him back out.
It is, which
it's
really
just
confuses
the tension of Gollum is as good or bad. Yeah.
You also get the iconic. The moment where Frodo is in the middle of, like, the battle for Osgiliath is raging around him, and he stands on that bit of, like, a ruined bridge, and do you remember he offers the ring to the Nazgul that's coming down and reaching out its claws. It's on the flying dragon.
This could be
thing.
The end.
And you think it's over. Like, he's an absolute goner. And then Faramir fires the arrow. So there are one or two good pieces. What do you think of Faramir?
I think he's not that well developed in he's a smaller side character. I don't think I have that strong an opinion on Faramir.
Yeah, he actually has a relatively small amount of screen time.
Yeah.
And yet we spoke when we were talking about Fellowship of the Ring about the fact that a character like Boromir, who goes no further because he's dead, does manage to undergo like a complete character arc in one film.
Yeah.
You even in a shorter amount of time, in about what we could roughly call half or even a third of the film, you see Faramir go through that decision-making tree of the ring is going to go to Gondor, but then by the end, he lets them go.
He lets them go, yeah.
And I still find that moving, even though we've spent almost no time with Faramir.
You're right.
We can't say that we massively care about him, but when his comrade reminds him, if you release them, your life is forfeit, and he says, then it is forfeit.
I think Faramir, and it's probably a hint of like we get to understand Faramir much more in Return of the King.
Yes,
it's a hint towards that, which I have much more to say about Faramir in Return of the King than in Two Towers.
That's right. Actually, if you look back at his appearance in Two Towers through a Return of the King lens, you think, okay, this is designed to be a lead up into that movie.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's quite succinct, his appearance just in Two Towers. Okay, which leads us to, let's also talk about Merry and Pippin, because I feel like we're saving our favourite. We're going to spend a long time talking about the Rohan thread. So, Merry and Pippin, oh boy, they have an interesting movie.
I mean, I think actually some of my favourite stuff of them is right at the beginning when they're they're being carried by the orcs, and they're like, they have to escape, and the orcs are like kind of haphazardly fighting with each other and with the riders, and they kind of take advantage of the situation, but they're quite savvy. Like they leave the little elven pin leaf to make sure that they can be followed, that they can be found.
That's
even
right.
though they like, what I can't remember, is it Pippin is like pretending to be more unwell than he is,
Merry,
so that they can like take advantage of what the orcs are thinking and expecting of them, and they do escape like a massive horde of orcs. Like, I'm impressed.
They do. In fact, several times. Yeah. Like, Merry and Pippin spend the first half of this film having a series of real near misses.
Yeah.
Like, they couldn't be in deeper shit at the start of the film. Yeah. They are literally being carried by a band of about 200 Uruk-hai. And like I think there's no way they're getting out of this. Like, there's no way. Like, okay, Merry and Pippin spits the pin on the ground.
Yeah.
But I really think even if Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn caught up with them.
What would
At
they
the start of
do?
the film, you think, what's your plan, guys? Like, and what on earth are you going to do? It takes all those riders, it takes the Rohirrim to mow down the Uruk-hai to defeat them. So I'm thinking, what on earth was Aragorn's plan going to be? I have no idea. But Merry and Pippin, you're right, they are ingenious. They manage to crawl away into Fangorn Forest.
Yeah.
And even then, that one blasted orc has followed them. And there's several moments where you think, it's over. They're goners. But they do manage to keep their heads above water for quite a long time.
And before we move into Fangorn Forest, can we just hint at the other storyline? Because they are intertwined. Can we just, appreciate how incredible it is that Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli, as part of the Fellowship, decide that their one mission now needs to be to find and save Merry and Pippin.
Yes.
Even though Merry and Pippin are probably the lowliest of the Fellowship, they're the hobbits. They are not even Frodo the hobbit who has the ring. They're just the extra ones that came along as friends.
Yep.
And yet, Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli are like, no, the most important thing for us to do now is to do the right thing and save Merry
them.
and Pippin.
Yeah, who had volunteered for this quest along with everyone else. I love it too. I find it a really moving decision.
Yeah.
I also find it an illogical decision.
Potentially.
Like, you, on the other hand, Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli, easily the three most capable surviving members of the Fellowship, could have, shadow quested along behind Frodo and Sam to sort of protect them from the rear or something. Aragorn knows where Frodo and Sam have gone. I'm always like, you could have sort of hung out a bit, hung back, sure, give them some space if you want.
Yeah.
But you're right, they decide to save Merry and Pippin instead.
They realise they can't sacrifice these essentially innocent members of their group. So,
and when it is suggested that they're dead, there's two instances of you really see the sense of loss from Gimli, Legolas, and when they encounter Eomer and he says, the Uruk-hai are destroyed, we slaughtered them during the night. And you see Gimli and Legolas's fate and Aragorn all think, oh my God, they're gone, they're lost. And of course, when they encounter the burning pyre of the bodies.
Yeah.
And it's very moving. Legolas whispers that sort of prayer for them. You see Gimli looks genuinely devastated. Do we talk about the helmet kick?
Let's just skip over it. It's fine.
Let's just skip over that. That would be a 10-minute digression. But you really think that their sense of failure is really deep.
And yet, they are not dead.
No.
They are in the forest.
What a brilliant way of that magnificent sequence. All the time the filmmaking is inventive. You could have just had them, I don't know, see Merry and Pippin's cloaks dashing off into Fangorn. But instead you have that brilliant sequence where Aragorn picks up the trail and he says, a hobbit lay here, then the other. And the filmmaking cuts back and forth.
Yeah, it is great.
It's so great. It's so inventive. This is why Peter Jackson deserves that Oscar at the end of this. So you think, brilliant idea, brilliant storytelling. And I guess before we carry on with the trees, we should also, it's sort of three narratives and a bit, because we do occasionally cut to Saruman.
Yes, and I guess that kind of overlaps with the Merry and Pippin thread by the end. So yeah, we understand that Saruman is building, the largest army that he possibly can, that he is no longer just this lone wizard in a tower, that he is. And we also understand that he is close by. He's right next to the forest that Merry and Pippin have just gone into, with this huge army. That the destruction of the trees is it's emotional in this kind of the huge scale of the infrastructure, and it's very much coded as this as the technology that they're building is destructive and negative and bad. It has a very, very obvious kind of moral
this is a
point.
big Tolkien theme, isn't it?
Exactly.
The industry means the end of idyllic countryside, and Saruman is kind of destruction personified.
Yeah.
But this concept of, it is actually one of the things that requires the film to be paused, I think, the most in The Two Towers to a new watcher. I feel like the number of times I've had to pause and explain to someone, and I totally get it. the concept of the geography and literally the two towers, so that you have got, and it doesn't help that Saruman and Sauron sound like the same person.
I know, it's very weird.
Why was that decision made? And that they each have a tower that, unless you're quite a seasoned viewer, they do look roughly the same.
Yeah.
And there's brilliant moments of filmmaking that try to help a novice viewer understand this. So there's a speech given to Saruman when he talks about who will stand against the might of Isengard and Mordor and the two towers.
Yeah.
And there are bits that try to sort of get you to understand that Rohan and Gondor are caught in like a geographical pincer effect between the two. And lots of little cutaways happen to help facilitate that understanding. Galadriel and Elrond have a weird little mind exchange. It's the bit that gets easily forgotten in the movie.
Yeah.
There's a bit, Elrond and Galadriel talk about basically the geography of what's happening.
Right.
And a very clever use of maps in the Faramir storyline.
Yes, I remember when Faramir brings out the map, and I do think, well, this is just to try and explain this to the audience. We are here.
We are
they
here.
are there.
That's right. His sort of comrade says something like, Saruman attacks from the west, Mordor from the east. We are stuck here. And I thought, I actually think, well, that's quite helpful. I've paused on that frame a couple of times to help explain to people. But that concept, it is the last time that we have that split focus of that the aggressors are split, because Two Towers ends with the destruction of Saruman.
Yeah.
And we get to focus all our attention in Return of the King.
On the big bad.
On the big bad.
Yeah.
But I like the Saruman threat. Maybe it's because Sauron is disembodied. But I enjoy that in Two Towers, it's Saruman's last play.
Yeah.
It's like his big all out.
And he's a real villain that you can kind of watch and see as he plots and plans. Whereas, as you're right, Sauron is kind of mythical, he's not really as tangible.
Things can be given to Saruman cinematically that can't be given to Sauron. So you have Saruman talking to, do you remember he riles up the horsemen, like the people, the wild men who go and attack the villages in Rohan, and he's like, take back your land,
and he gets them to do that, the other guys to do the oath with the where they cut their hands,
all of this,
like the white hand on their
white hands on all the Uruk-hai. And before he sends the Uruk-hai to attack Helm's Deep, he gives that speech to the tens of thousands that's a little bit Nuremberg rallies.
Totally.
It's really there's a lot of reference to 20th century European warfare that's quite chilling, and that can't really happen with Sauron.
No,
he's just a big eye.
Yeah. So let's jump back to while all this is going on, while Saruman is raising his army and bringing everyone in. Merry and Pippin are next door with Treebeard, who they've bumped into very literally.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously, Treebeard is slow.
Oh, God, it kills me.
But that is the point. That is the point. And it is meant to be frustrating. Yeah. You're meant to be frustrated why you won't do anything, why they won't act, why they won't rise up against what's going on. And so you're meant to feel that kind of slowness and that frustration. But I also think it's interesting because it's one of the fewer occasions where we see kind of a real kind of magic, like the magic of the trees and the Ents, as something otherwise. Like, obviously we have that with, the Balrog in the first one. And the ring
you're right,
itself.
actually.
But actually it's a kind of very, really kind of otherworldly, magical kind of creature that we don't get that often. Normally we're grounded in a bit more reality, even though it's fantastical.
I hadn't thought of that, and actually especially in Two Towers, because Two Towers feels so situated in the world of men.
Yes.
In a way that the first film, we spent a lot of time with the elves.
Yes, the elves
we get
are
the
more
Balrog.
magical. Yeah.
There feels like more magical creatures in the first film. So it's nice that there is that sense of mythological, living, breathing Fangorn forest where the trees talk.
And we get the sense that they are, one of the most ancient of beings, and they're part of the land and the earth. And as we said, that's a real Tolkien theme, is about what is part of the earth and the land and nature, is magic, and
but it does frustrate me.
Yeah.
And I sort of have a love-hate relationship with it, because it makes me want to cry whenever we cut away from Helm's Deep and we're taken back to the bloody Ent moot, and they've not made a sodding decision, and you think, come on! But it allows some great moments to happen. So I love that the bit where Merry's anger bursts out and he sort of yells, but you're part of this world.
Yeah.
Aren't you? And it allows Merry and Pippin to sort of man up and have to give this speech about, you need to participate. This war is going to claim you if you don't get a grip on it.
And I think because of that slowness and because of that frustration, when they do rise up and you get the March of the Ents and the music is incredible and they just come down, and then the whole of Isengard is just engulfed with the trees and then the flooding of the water, is absolutely epic, because you know that they easily could have just
done
not
nothing.
done it.
It's one of the best sequences with one of the best bits of music.
The music.
The music,
it's the music, isn't it?
The last March of the Ents.
Yeah.
It gets me every time.
So good.
And there's a little high, like, choral voice in the background, and they're like, da, 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 da. And I'm thinking, oh my God. Yeah, that you've gone from these, like, almost semi-comic, comically slow tree characters to thinking, oh, Sauron is so going down.
Yeah.
Not Sauron, Saruman. That's the confusion. Okay, I think we've exhausted the lovely Merry and Pippin storyline. Bless them. Oh, boy. I love, like, to me, it is the Rohan storyline, which is the Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Gandalf storyline.
Yes.
That is the reason I love Two Towers.
Of course, yeah.
Oh, my God. It's so easy to forget that this storyline is entirely new in the Two Towers, because by the time we get to the end of that film, you've really been able to absorb and care desperately about, well, first of all, you've been able to absorb new characters like Grima Wormtongue, Eomer.
Yeah.
But I really care about Eowyn, Theoden.
Totally.
Like, in one film.
And I think it's because of the introduction of Rohan as a new civilization and a new place and location, which is done incredibly well. You know, we've already talked about, you know, them going through the forest, they're looking for Merry and Pippin, they don't find Merry and Pippin, they
find Gandalf.
They find Gandalf, and pretty soon after that, they introduce us to this whole new landscape. The style of the, you know, the culture and the buildings and the horses.
Edoras.
And it's just like, it's just so well designed to put you into another world, and you immediately feel like, I understand these people. They're, you know, obviously lots of medieval references that we understand and we know, and it really just does throw you into another world that you immediately start to care about.
I wonder if that's also why we like it, because we feel a sense of locatedness with it. It does feel the least fantastical and the most historical.
Yes.
The Rohan storyline.
Yes.
You look at it and you think, I recognise this sort of. This feels a bit Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah.
This feels a bit early medieval.
Kind of in a similar way to how the Shire feels recognisable as English countryside, lovely little green villages and nice. But this is like a different version of that. But yeah, it's a different type of recognisable that you kind of, you associate with. It's good.
And I love that historical period. And so for me, the introduction of a sort of a horse culture where everything is based on the strength of like their cavalry, but they've got shields and swords, and I think Eowyn is a shield maiden. Yeah, and I'm thinking, I love this. Thank God that we're here. This is a great, it's my favourite civilization, I think, in Lord of the Rings.
I think so. And I was just thinking, it's like the number one place where I want to go when we go to New Zealand. Is like, I would love to go to Hobbiton, of course, and I will, but to go and see that hill where Edoras stands. I know there's nothing even there left anymore, but I just want to see it. Like, it's so just iconic, that hill with the buildings on top. It's just beautiful.
It's a really good way as well. The introduction of Theoden and his kind of being possessed by Saruman is a brilliant device for how we learn about the increased powers of Gandalf the White.
Yes.
So you could otherwise just think, he's had a shower. And he's in a slightly cleaner cloak.
Yeah.
And he's got a hair straightener.
Yeah.
Like, Gandalf the White has used GHDs. He has. When he first appears, he's got this very 2000s hair straightener.
Straight
look.
hair, yeah, you're right.
But you think, okay, really, what are we going to see from this guy? What's the increased kind of power capability here? But when he frees Theoden from the spell of Saruman, remember, he throws off the grey cloak.
Yes.
And you think, oh,
but the moment before that is one of my favourites, where he just he just persuades the guards that he can walk in with his staff. And you just know, you can see he's tricking them into letting him keep his staff. He's like, would you deny an old man? Like,
his walking stick.
So clever. And then you just know
that
something's going to go down.
He gives a little wink to Aragorn.
Yeah.
And you see, the camera pans across to Aragorn's little smile to himself, like, we've got this, guys.
Yeah.
It's all good. And in that sequence, Gandalf's just like talking to Theoden about drawing out the poison of Saruman. But do you remember there's this like comedy slapstick series of fights going on around them with like Legolas just like punching dudes in the face and Gimli's like holding down Grima Wormtongue because everyone comes for Gandalf and the three of them just are like having a full-on fist fight.
Yeah, to keep everyone
Gandalf.
away.
Yeah, so good. What do you think about this? Another strength of this storyline for me is the introduction of Eowyn.
Oh, of course. I absolutely love Eowyn. And I think she's much needed, as we talked about. You know, there aren't many female characters, and she's one that has her own kind of independent storyline, quite independently of the rest of the kind of cast. She's got her own motivations and feelings, and she really she plays a kind of integral role, particularly in Return of the King, to be fair. But yeah, her introduction is you get this mixture of her being this maiden, where you see the nastiness of how Wormtongue treats her and is quite leering over her and clearly wants her and desires her. But you also see the other side of her, which, as you said, is the shield maiden. Yeah. She's makes it very clear from very early on that she can fight with the sword. She shows Aragorn, and she's ready to defend the honor of her family and her civilization. And she's awesome.
The development of the Eowyn character, which we have to give credit here to the filmmakers, because she's really not like her book presence is like zero.
No, she is in the books. She is in the books.
The difference between so much of her stuff has been added and created for the films, and it is necessary because these otherwise feel like these are boys' movies, and Two Towers, it is more and more boys' action that you almost had to put her in there for a balancing effect. But it works so well. And if we break down aspects of Eowyn's character, she is a prototype for the sort of female, like, lit heroines in fantasy that we then go on to like.
Yeah, although she's probably more humble and...
She's a shield maiden.
Yeah,
she's like a princess.
But she's quite reserved and quiet. She's not...
She's stoic in a way that's quite... Yeah.
It's quite different. She's not putting herself out there.
No.
In
Two
the
Towers,
kind of conversations and in the politics, but she does it in secret and in quiet, behind the scenes, and that's how she kind of uses her power.
But it is almost like when we start to develop our discussion of the Rohan storyline, it's going to take us into our categories, because the Rohan plot moves very quickly to become two action sequences.
Yeah.
The warg battle on the road to Helm's Deep, and then, of course, Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
And discussion of Eowyn is gonna segue into discussion of Aragorn and Eowyn for me. So, shall we go to our categories?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I think our first category is obsession fuel, and I think we've probably mostly covered obsession fuel of Lord of the Rings. Like, it we know it's one of the biggest sources and time sinks for obsession. Is just
you're right, we can almost rule that one out.
We can probably skip over that.
We talked about in Fellowship in depth the way that these movies kind of conditioned us as teenagers and as fangirls, and totally led to a relationship that we then had with like merch and posters and learning runes.
I guess what the Two Towers brings is, with the introduction of the newer realms, with Rohan, with Isengard, with the Fangorn Forest and the Ents, we're just expanding more of the mythos that we can learn about. So, yeah.
Definitely. The excitement level goes up a whole notch here.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So though the obsession fuel, it almost segues into the thermometer level for me. Because Two Towers was like my first encounter with like a film character that I just loved. It was my first obsession. Deep, desperate obsession with Aragorn.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how I'm going to describe this accurately, and I'm pretty sure that it's shared with a lot of other people of my age group who saw this film and couldn't believe. I could not believe in the Two Towers the way that Aragorn was sort of stepped up a notch in terms of his portrayal.
Yeah.
I need to give this film on the thermometer scale. See, like, objectively, I want to give it like a 65. But for me, I have to give it a 100. It was the hottest film. And like, Aragorn was the hottest thing to me. Age 12.
You know what? It's so funny because I didn't have the Aragorn thing as a child.
We don't share this.
Like, no, but I think now, when I watch those films, I like objectively appreciate and get it. But I think at the time I was just too obsessed with Johnny Depp. So
you were distracted.
I was distracted. Love. But yeah, please tell us more about Viggo Mortensen.
Well, we talked about how in Fellowship, he's sort of obviously the nominal good-looking one in the Fellowship. Unless, the Orlando Bloom fans will be up in arms, but we just have to quickly disclaim that he does nothing for me. Like, he's very pretty, etc., etc. But it's almost like the second film has realised how hot Aragorn is and starts to adapt some of the scenes like around that or to play to it in a way that I'm just such a sucker for. I'm like, yes, more of that. Like, it's in Two Towers that he gets a bit of a hairstyle change. If you go back and watch Fellowship, his hair's like quite clean and fluffy and sort of neat at times. From Two Towers onwards, it's that sort of bedraggled, slightly wet look.
Sweaty.
He's sweaty in the Two Towers. Two Towers is like hormonal Aragorn, and it works. But they also they drench him in water.
Yeah.
They at some points he's got sort of very strategic rips in his clothing to show off his upper arm muscles. Like the filmmaking has realised how hot Aragorn is. And of course we have the pushing open of the doors in Helm's Deep.
It is a classic.
I think that is, if Fellowship of the Ring's kind of USP moment, maybe we're also just giving a head to our USP category, is You Shall Not Pass. The Two Towers one has got to be Aragorn opening the doors.
Yeah, maybe.
It's just got to be. I think of meme culture. Yeah. Think of all the gifs people use. And like that moment where Aragorn pushes open the doors and saunters in. I'm like, oh,
it's so good.
I watched it yesterday and I made some sounds. It's like, whoa. And it's the first introduction of a sort of semi-love triangle between... The first film had Aragorn and Arwen established. And now we introduce a complication. Now we introduce Eowyn.
But it's interesting because Arwen is not there.
Nope, she's not there.
Arwen is not there at all. So we only ever see these kind of thoughts and memories, and they're kind of thinking about each other from afar. But we never... there isn't a love triangle really because they're not all in the same place.
Yep, that's right. You have to... They really managed to do the best possible job of incorporating Arwen back into the Aragorn storyline and reminding us of him through dialogue that's given to Eowyn. She kind of inquires. She says, where is the woman that gave you that jewel? Yeah. And you think, oh dear. And that discussion segues into what I'm only going to describe as the dream sequence of Arwen in the semi-see-through nightdress.
Oh, yeah.
What is she wearing? She's wearing a sort of purple summer dress. And Aragorn's
she's an elf. She can wear what she wants.
But, yeah, she is... And her appearances in that film could be comic, and yet they work. And she appears as that odd dream vision to kiss Aragorn awake Yes. Do you remember he's
after
washed
he
up
falls
after the river?
off the cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah. We kind of assume that somehow her power and her love is kind of pulling him through in that moment and keeping him alive.
Yeah, and you are reminded of how committed he is to her, because there's that very moving moment where Legolas gives him back the Even Star necklace that had otherwise fallen off of him.
Yeah.
And I think you assume Aragorn thinks he'd lost it. And when Legolas gives it back to him, the look he gives Legolas is like, shows you how precious that necklace was to him and how precious Arwen is to him.
Yeah.
And I think he says to him in Elvish something like Hanon lay, thank you.
I think the thing that's so relatable about that kind of love triangle is the fact that ultimately Eowyn is fantasizing about Aragorn. She really looks up to him and really kind of she wants him, but she also sees him as a great man.
Yeah, she sees his potential.
Yeah, and yet, because she is only a woman and a kind of Rohan woman, she can never live up to this kind of mythical elven Arwen, this
she can't be her.
love. She can't, and that kind of yearning for something that you can't have and won't have is just, it's very relatable.
Mm-hmm. It's also brilliantly done because the two enhance each other in that the viewer already understands that Aragorn is hot.
Yeah.
So we utterly relate to Eowyn's wide-eyed amazement at like you can see her starting to fancy him and you think, girl, I get it. Like we get it. We're here. Don't worry. But the two enhance the other because in showing us the development of Eowyn's feelings for Aragorn, the film has to have Aragorn continue to do a sequence of hot stuff, which makes us love him more. You're like, oh my God. Like, this is best encapsulated when you see in Rohan in Edoras, Eowyn does that marvellous sequence where she is training with the sword herself. And she turns round and Aragorn catches her sword with his dagger blade.
Yes.
And she just stares at him. And I remember when he does that thinking, I go like, oh, wow. But you see her face think, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you think, yeah, this is so well done. You can see her. Or before the warg battle, he turns back and it's in slow-mo. He turns back. He's riding Brago and she gives him the look.
Yeah.
Like, don't die. Don't die, because we were in the middle of a little flirtation. Don't die. And like, I gotta say, Aragorn, I know he loves Arwen, but he does give Eowyn the time of day.
Do you think? Or do you think he's just kind of clueless?
The film, we have to believe for the sake of the continuation of the Arwen storyline that he's clueless. But
until later. It does get discussed in Return of the King.
Yeah, he doesn't mean to lead her on.
Yeah.
But you, the viewer, watch that thinking, I can see why Eowyn would have been writing in her little diary, Mrs. Aragorn.
Why she thinks she has a chance.
Why she thinks she has a chance.
Yeah.
And I think if Arwen was not there,
maybe she would have had a chance.
Then she would. It's almost bizarre because the cutback sequences to Arwen, you remember that Aragorn at this point in the film thinks Arwen has left. Because there's a cutback to Arwen. He says to her, go, take the ships.
And I think he says to Eowyn that she's gone.
Left. Yeah. So when I watch it, I think, is Aragorn allowing himself to have a little bit of interest in Eowyn?
I don't know.
And a bit of me has to believe it because Eowyn is the human anchor in the film. Like, you can't relate to Arwen. I always think, oh, bloody Arwen. Like, I'd never get Aragorn. Like, he loves Arwen. So it's like, we're Eowyn.
I guess we are. Like, I need to think he likes Eowyn. There's something about the kind of the epic myth love storyline being kind of separate and above the kind of day-to-day of human men. It's like there's kind of two different things.
But by Return of the King, because the action has stepped up so much and Aragorn has to step into that full king mode, it moves a little bit away from the Aragorn being this like hot, sweaty mess.
He's less human. He's more,
So my sort of like the highest thermometer level for me for Aragorn is given to Two Towers. The camera loves him in that. Like the opening shot of Aragorn in Two Towers is him. It's like this sensuous close up on his face where he's like listening to the earth for
Oh,
the
yeah,
footsteps of the Uruk-hai. And I'm like, whoever the cinematographer is doing this shot was like, guys, I've got a plan. We're just going to do a close-up of Aragorn's cheekbones. And that's going to set the tone for the whole movie.
All right, let's
Anyway.
move on to our
Badass
badass levels.
Oh my God.
Where do we even start? We're gonna talk at length about Helm's Deep. Are there any other parts that you'd like to give honorary mentions to as badass moments before we talk about Helm's Deep?
First of all, I mean, do we initially agree that this is the most badass thing of all time? This has to have our highest level.
Yes, totally.
There's been lots of other episodes where we've talked about cool kind of action fantasy sequences or cool films, or even with Fellowship, where we've been holding back on our badassness rating because we've been gesturing to what's to come. This is what we were gesturing to, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This is Two Towers, I think, is the most awesome.
The most badass of all.
The most badass of all. And I know there's technically more action to come in Return of the King, but there's something about Two Towers where I just think it's at the highest pitch. The badassness is top.
Yeah.
Okay, so before Helm's Deep, is there anything you think? I've got a bunch, but before Helm's Deep, are there any moments in Two Towers where you think, that was cool?
Oh, well, the classic one, which people are divided on whether it was cool or lame, is the Legolas swing onto the horse.
That's the best one. It's not lame. It's cool. It's cool.
It's cool.
Like, I will rewind it and watch it again. That is...
Yeah.
We have to give that its due reverence, because with Fellowship, we talked about, in that film, you do see Legolas's bow and arrow skills, but just in the same way that we said the filmmakers kind of hadn't quite realised how hot Aragorn was, then they go for it in the Two Towers. By the time we get to Two Towers, people have realised you can do some really cool stuff with Legolas.
Yeah.
Like, really cool stuff. And this is one of them.
I actually think some of the coolest moments and coolest shots and things are actually... at the beginning when the trio are kind of running across the hills.
Oh, beautifully shot.
It's I mean, it's less badass in terms of fighting, but it's badass in like they're literally like scaling like mountains and getting across this whole land. It's like
cross country.
It's also like funny and like it's great.
Yeah, it gives you the comedy with Gimli.
Yeah.
Who's like, you know, built, what does he say, that dwarves are like
natural sprinters. Very dangerous over short distances.
That's right. So I guess that's quite badass that they're like cross-country tracking down the Uruk. Even though we said, like, what on earth is their plan when they get to
They
them.
are pretty badass.
But there are lots of badass moments before we get to Helm's Deep. You talked already about the bit where they are asked to hand over their weapons at the gates of... before they kind of enter the Hall of Edoras. And whenever they like de-weapon, for some reason, I'd forgotten like how many weapons they had. So there's this cool bit where like Aragorn's like got a bow and arrow plus daggers plus a sword, and I'm like, bloody hell, the guy's like packing a lot of weaponry. And Legolas takes the two knives out from behind his back and like flips them over, and then Gimli's just got his axe. So that's kind of you think, yeah, wow, okay, these guys really could have done some damage. And of course, though, they let Gandalf keep the staff.
Yeah. And you mentioned the warg fight, which is obviously on the way.
It's brilliant.
I find that one, I don't know, I find that one less engaging than like some of the others. It's kind of harder to get into like the choreography of it all and like how it all fits together. I don't quite, I always find that one much more difficult to watch than some of the other fights in Lord of the Rings.
But you don't actually see a ton of fighting. The reasons that sequence is great are these like small... unique moments. So absolutely the Legolas shoot slow-mo, swing up onto the horse neck, one of the top moments of the film. Yeah. And then the strange little comedy moments where Gimli has all the wargs fall on top of him.
Yes.
And they keep dying.
Oh,
And it's the introduction of the competitive, that one counts as mine.
Yes, Legolas versus Gimli kind of continuing as a rivalry. Yeah, it's great.
And it is when Aragorn goes off the cliff.
Yes.
And that was one of the moments in the View cinemas. Because I think a lot of people in the 2000s, when these movies came out, a lot of people were watching this with zero idea of what actually, like, they didn't know who lived or died.
No, of course not, no.
So
most people would have been watching it without knowing the books.
Yeah. I remember when Aragorn goes off the cliff in the warg battle, people in the cinema went, oh! Like, we were like, oh my God, you've just killed Aragorn. I think 1 or 2 people left. Just like, well, that's it for me.
That's enough, thanks.
My interest in this film's gone. No, but it's very, that battle doesn't have a lot of the actual action because it's those small little pieces going on. Yeah. And it is just something to interrupt and frustrate the getting to Helm's Deep moment. Okay, other cool badass moments. We've got to give a shout out to Treebeard when he squishes the orc with his foot. That's cool. Yeah. And you think, oh, okay, well, maybe I should be a bit afraid of the trees.
Yeah.
And a huge badass shout out to when Grima Wormtongue has run back to Saruman.
Oh yeah.
And you see the two of them have this really cool little dynamic of like, you know, henchmen. Saruman didn't really have a henchman.
No, and he gets one in this film.
He gets one. Yeah. And when he does, I think, yeah, that's a good idea. He should have had one all along. And you see him building the bomb, which is chilling. And Grima comes up behind him with a candle and says, how can fire undo stone?
Yeah.
And if you hadn't quite, as the viewer, picked up on what was going on, because it is incongruous to introduce a bomb into Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But what a brilliant piece of direction to have. Peter Jackson has Saruman grab Grima's and pull him back with the candle. Yeah. And what a way to tell the viewer, that's a big bomb.
It's an explosive.
It's an explosive.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to say it.
Yeah.
It's so well done.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And you think,
a good moment.
Shit, that's badass.
Also, the other badass Grima Saruman moment is the moment when Grima Wormtongue first sees I don't understand how he didn't see the armies on his way into Isengard, but never mind. That aside, when he first opens up the gates at the top of the tower and he sees and hears the sound of Saruman's army, and then there's like tens of thousands. It's just like, oh my goodness.
Yes. They're walking out and Grima says, but my lord, there is no such force. And
God, it's there!
And then he sees it. And
his face.
He cries. A little tear rolls down his eye and you think, he really hadn't realised what he'd signed up for here. Yeah. Because it's terrifying.
All right. I think that's going to bring us into
Helm's Deep. I was scanning for is there much badassness in the sort of... it's hard to care about the Osgiliath battle with Faramir. It's just totally eclipsed by Helm's Deep. And we've talked about the March of the Ents.
Exactly.
That's cool. That was badass.
That's cool.
Love it. But we're going to go to Helm's Deep.
We've got to go into Helm's Deep. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this battle it's the template for all epic fantasy battles that have ever come after. It was unique and brilliant and just so well created that everyone has just been trying to recreate it and has never been able to.
No, it's not been bettered.
It's not been bettered.
It's the single best fantasy battle
of all time.
Of all time.
Agreed.
Of all time. And I spend the whole first 2/3 of the movie knowing it's coming and thinking it's happening.
And it's a huge chunk of screen time.
Absolutely.
It's massive.
Which is why the strategic cutaways to either Frodo and Sam or the trees work so well. Yeah. Because you think, bloody hell, I gotta get back there. Oh my god. Okay, we're gonna have to go into it in detail. First of all, I love the inventive. I love how much time it spends on it. Yeah. That it really, and for people who are into historical battles or castles and keeps, it really speaks to their nerdiness.
And it's really built up in that we really understand the structure of Helm's Deep itself.
Yes.
We understand where all the women and children are hiding. We understand how they're going to place themselves on all the battlements. It's really, we are able to follow the narrative of the battle because we understand what they're trying to defend physically 100%. And how it fits together.
That's exactly what I mean. The pre-battle shots around Helm's Deep, whether they're aerial shots or a lot of it's using that miniature, you understand where the Deeping Wall is, where the Hornburg is. Yeah. And you have to, because the minute you get into the battle, they yell things like, retreat to the keep, or the Deeping Wall is breached. And you have to be like, oh, I saw that earlier. Yeah. Right, that's bad. Yeah. That's the main bit. And they set up where the drain is. That's the point of weakness.
The weakness.
So you do, and even the structure itself is one, you know, it's a little bit ruined anyway. You can see it's been attacked a bunch of times.
Yeah, and we know that it's a kind of place of historical interest to the Rohan people themselves. Like they know the fact that they've been brought here is of significance.
Yeah.
They understand the seriousness of the situation they're in as they're trudging across to it. They know the historical battles that have happened there, and it must be a terrifying kind of experience to lock yourself up in there.
And the level of danger it's like laid down for us before we even get there by Gandalf talks about it and it says, you know, Theoden thinks he's saving them, but he's walking into a trap. He's like, they're going to get a massacre. And you think, oh God, right. Okay, blimey. And of course, Gandalf has gone by that point.
Yeah. You really believe they could lose.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Saruman's forces have been built up. Their weakness has been shown, that they are just regular
It's just a bunch of
families.
farmers.
And and even when they're recruiting all the men, and you know, they have to get the like oldest and the youngest little boys have to pick up swords and come and fight. And Aragorn speaks to that young boy.
Oh, that
it's
sequence
just
is
devastating.
completely devastating.
And you realise how this is not the same as Saruman's army.
No way. And we've spent enough time seeing Saruman's army. As we've just said, we've seen it with Grima. And there's the brilliant introduction of... when Aragorn falls off the waterfall, I always think, why? Like, why is that included? Why do we need that in the film? But it's to allow him on Brago to see them advancing and to be able to come to Helm's Deep and say... He has that exchange with Theoden where he says 10,000 strong at least.
Yeah.
And Theoden, like, totally poos his pants.
Yeah.
Theoden's like, what? Oh my God, we're going down.
Yeah.
So you know what is kind of coming for them before the army even get there. And I think Aragorn says they'll be here by nightfall.
Yeah.
And you think, oh my God, right, you're absolutely stuffed.
And one of the things that is so great is the night setting.
Yes.
It is so atmospheric. And what it isn't is just pitch black darkness and you can't see what's going on. And it's just so well filmed to make you feel the oppression of the night, but yet you can tell everything that's going on and you can follow every character. And it's just the rain and the miserableness of that whole situation is just so,
You and I have very strong feelings about Helm's Deep Mark II, which is the Battle of Winterfell in Game of Thrones, where you can see absolutely sodding nothing.
Literally nothing.
And that whole sequence is designed to replicate Helm's Deep, and it doesn't work.
No.
And Helm's Deep manages to be shot in the dark and the rain, and yet be incredibly visually clear and arresting. You can see every bit of movement. You can see every sword swing, every like bit of spit coming out of an urukai, despite the fact it's shot in the darkness. But that level of terror is heightened, I think, because of it, for sure.
Yeah.
Are there... And it splits into those three... You have the build-up to Helm's Deep that we've talked about. But then literally when we're at Helm's Deep, we have all the pre-battle sequences.
And they're standing on the fortifications, looking out.
Yeah.
You see the lines and lines of men and, you know, every level of person from the trained fighters to the kind of just regular people that have been given a sword that's pretty much blunt and they don't know what to do with it. And
there's like boys with slingshots.
Yeah,
but
they're all standing there in formation and they are all ready to follow Theoden.
Yep. You see... We can't possibly skip past the Aragorn putting on the armour sequence. Again, another... This is what
Indulgent.
I mean. You don't see Gimli getting dressed. Sorry, like, John Rhys Daisies. But, like, you just don't. They have Aragorn put on his armour and kind of gear up for it.
Yeah.
In a way that you think, right, Aragorn's in, like, serious mode. Sub-question, why... You know when Gandalf leaves them and he sort of turns to... This is when Gandalf's going off to find Eomer.
Yeah.
So we're back in Rohan. And he says to Aragorn, the defences have to hold. And Aragorn sort of says, they will hold. Why is Aragorn in charge of Helm's Deep's defences? He's like not from there. Why is he suddenly in charge?
I think they know who he is. Theoden understands who he is and that he is a great warrior. Like, this is understood.
I mean, we know why. But, like, if you're, like, the random dudes of Rohan, wouldn't you be like, who's this guy? Who the hell is this guy?
I don't know. He looks regal enough. We'll follow him.
Okay, within 5 minutes, you're like, okay, fine. Yeah, he's obviously the best. But he and Theoden have a tense relationship in the build-up.
They do, but then once you're actually on the battle, they are essentially taking on different areas and taking charge of different areas and able to kind of collaborate in that way.
But Aragorn is absolutely, like, manning the battlements. Yeah. He's the guy, he's leading the charge, 100%.
Yeah.
And Theoden's sort of chilling inside the Hornburg or wherever he is. Like, he's standing inside. What else about the battlement build-up do we like?
There's the levity. It starts the kind of Gimli Legolas fun where he talks about like, shall I give you a box?
I'll give you a box.
And it's just you start to see, okay, we're not going to lose all fun in this battle. We're still going to have the kind of, the back and forth between them amongst all of the drama.
That's so true, that this battle is terrifying, and yet at the same time, some of the greatest moments of comedy and fun come out of it.
Yeah.
Almost all of it generated by the Legolas Gimli contest to see who can kill the most. They sort of tabulate how many Uruk-hai they take down, definitely. What did you think about, and were you surprised in the cinema when the elves show up?
Totally. It's kind of out of nowhere. Yeah. I can't remember whether there's a hint of it earlier, but
there is that weird cutaway, the forgettable cutaway, where we segue from, it's that Elrond and Arwen speech where he's telling Arwen to leave, and then we cut to Galadriel, and she says to Elrond, will we let them stand alone? And that, I think, is the seed of he sends Haldir.
Yeah, but you know what it is? The entrance of the elves with it's another moment where the music is what kind of separates the characters, like the same as the Isengard moment. The music changes when they come in, and suddenly we're like, and we're like, oh yes, this is the elves. This is different, and they're all in formation, and they know what they're doing, and they look really smart, and they're like, oh okay, right, we've got some proper fighters here.
When they show up, I just think, thank God.
Yeah.
And you're right, they look snappy.
Yeah.
In a way that, like, the kind of riffraff chilling out on the battlements of Helm's Deep do not. You think, oh my God, thank goodness people with, like, proper weapons have shown up.
Yeah.
But again, not without the lightness. So Legolas gives Haldir a bit of a hug, I think. No, Aragorn gives him a proper hug. Do you know, I think Legolas says some sort of nice formal thing to him.
Yeah, because Aragorn would have known him from Rivendell.
Aragorn draws him into this sort of bear hug and says, you are most welcome.
Yes.
Like, thank God for showing up. Yeah. That's brilliant. And then Haldir draws... And, like, for some reason, we managed to care about Haldir within 10 minutes, so that when he dies,
we're really sad.
I was so sad. When Haldir dies, I think, no. But even though he showed up 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. So shall we start talking about the actual battle as it happens and how it starts? I mean, it's kind of devastating how it starts. It kind of starts with, as we've shown, that these people, they're not trained soldiers. No. And so they accidentally let an arrow loose early and it starts the battle. But, you know, the battle was going to start. It was inevitable. It was going to happen. And it's just this tension that is just broken by that one arrow just happening, and everything just goes to chaos after that.
That's it. They have that standoff where everybody's on the battlements in Helm's Deep. Aragorn's telling them to hold. And the Uruk-hai have lined up in formation. And you're right, it oscillates between those shots of the Uruk-hai look absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
They're giant, they've got these big growling mouths, and then you cut back to like the little boys and the scared men. And when that first arrow is loosed, that's it. Yeah. All hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
But even though we said you really genuinely think the people of Helm's Deep can lose, at the start of that battle, there's a bit where you look at it and you think, well, hang on, I mean, they are on these big walls.
Yeah,
and
they've got big
defences.
defences.
They've got big defences, and they're going to fire a load of arrows down at these guys. But then you start seeing the battle strategy of the Uruk-hai, like the ladders come forward, and you think,
oh, God.
fuck, oh no, they've had it.
These orcs have planned.
I don't know whether it was Saruman or who was in charge, but whoever did the battle strategy, is it fair to say that actually until Gandalf shows up, the Uruk-hai kind of deserved to win?
Yeah, they have the ladders, they have the battering ram, they have the bomb. They are like Yeah.
They're ready to win.
They are ready to win.
100%. That's like, I have to give the credit where it's due, that they have really understood the infrastructure of what they're dealing with.
And the elves obviously are doing an excellent job and taking down as many of them as they can from afar. But as soon as the orcs make it onto the wall and into the keep, basically everyone's just retreating. They can't do anything to stop them, really, from getting through.
When the ladders go up at the start, I think, oh God, you guys are a bit screwed. But then when the bomb happens, I think it's over.
Yeah.
You've all had it.
Yeah.
This is the end, because they swarm in through the wall. Credit to Aragorn, of course. He continues to lead time after time after time. So he's on the battlement doing the hold, fire, all of this. But after the bomb, he leads the countercharge.
Yeah.
In slow-mo. He kind of gets his sword ready and says, charge.
Yeah.
And they all just run at them.
And you know what? Theoden does similar. He gets all his stuff on and he goes out on his horse with the last
ride of the Rohirrim.
Last ride. But it's in a kind of, he feels... he thinks he's defeated.
That's right.
And that he needs to go out with his men and to show leadership and to go down with his ship, essentially, the captain going down with his ship. But
which by the way, I have to say, ironic, it's Bernard Hill again. Yeah. Before we get to Lord of the Rings, he has quite literally gone down with his ship. He's gone from being the captain of the Titanic to this. Poor guy.
And so, yes, it's brave, and yes, it's a strong symbol, but he's not really going out there to win, whereas Aragorn is going out there to win.
Aragorn does not give up.
Yeah.
And I think the battle never feels tiresome because it has these micro sequences. We have to shout out to the other cool Legolas moment, which is, of course, the skateboarding on the shield.
Yeah, another.
Down the stairs. That is another. I think people clapped.
Yeah.
And they clapped when he swung round onto the horse, and they clapped when he went down the stairs on the, shield skateboard thing. Yeah. That was awesome. But Helm's Deep has that micro cutaway where Aragorn and Gimli decide to swing out onto the rampart to try and knock the Uruk-hai off, who are otherwise battering down with the battering ram.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That is pretty good.
And you think, Aragorn, he does not give up. and Gimli, you get that nice callback to Fellowship where he says, you're going to have to toss me.
Yeah.
I can't jump the distance. Not a word to the elf.
I think it's good because they're doing these individual things, but also Aragorn is kind of thinking at the strategic scale of keeping charge of everyone, but also using his own individual strength to make the most impact at any moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of when Gandalf appears?
I mean, it's just, it's a moment of saviour, right? Mm-hmm. It's a moment of, this is the end, we think it's the end, and yet we remember that Gandalf has said that they should look
to the east.
And we suddenly remember that Gandalf did not just abandon them for no reason. And it's a moment of kind of divine miracle, basically.
Yeah, and you almost get the god rays behind him. Because
and the horses go down this steep slope that I'm not sure horses really could run down.
I don't think they can. Can you remember watching this? We watched this with Claire, and she was like, who was an equestrian, and she was like, not possible. Not possible.
They're all magic. It's fine.
Yeah, it's all magic. And sort of a slight side nod in the badass category to Shadowfax, the best horse of all time. He doesn't even need a saddle. No. He's like Lord of the Horses at all this, and possibly the best looking horse I've ever seen.
And it brings in the light and the sunrise, because you know it's at the rising of the sun. We're meant to be looking to the east. It's the change in the visuals in the movie. Literally switches from this nighttime fight into this bright white light that takes over, and they're able to win.
It does come at the moment where, if it hadn't have been for that, you're right, you've had Theoden ride out, and you think, that's it. It's over. And you can even see at that point, there's still a load of Uruk-hai left.
Yeah.
You're like, they're just keeping going.
Yeah.
There's loads of them still coming. We've had the cutaways to the women and children in the caves who are crying, who think, this is it. We've had it. It's over. And then, thank God that Gandalf appears.
Yeah.
But by that point, you, the audience, are like, we need this. we need this. Haldir's down. Aragorn's holding on by a thread.
Oh.
You're like, yeah, this was the moment. Otherwise, I'd all had it.
All right.
Oh my God.
I think we've talked about Helm's Deep. How shall we leave it for going into Return of the King next time?
Well, I mean, we literally had to leave that cinema thinking it's going to be a year.
Yeah.
I remember feeling like grief at the end of Two Towers, thinking I can't bear the wait until next December.
Yeah.
It was all we talked about
and
at
to
school.
understand how all this would conclude. I mean, we really haven't got very far with Frodo and the ring. Like the whole point of the story just hasn't gone any further. We don't know how it's. And we mentioned already that we suspect Gollum of something, and you know we're going into this kind of. Oh goodness! How are we actually gonna make it to Mordor?
Yeah.
In the next movie,
You're not allowed to end on the note of relief that Helm's Deep has been a success.
No,
at all. You have to end on the sense of threat. That we come back to that quiet moment of Gollum leading the hobbits away, and you just think, really, you have to leave me stressed? Are you kidding? Like that's so. And we were thrown a slight lifeline in the middle of that year because, you know, we've got the DVDs and I think probably the extended edition. But no, we were desperate for Return of the King to come out, which is going to be, we will do that another time. So
yeah, you guys will also have to wait.
Oh, thank you to
hear
everyone
us talk about Return of the King
who indulged us listening to my favourite film of all time. And we'll come back to do Maddie's favourite film of all time, The Return of the King, another time. You've been listening to the Fangirl Diaries. Follow us on Instagram at Fangirl Diaries Pod.
And do share us with any of your friends that you think might enjoy the podcast, and rate or review us on Spotify or Apple Music.